is very heartening for us because we're doing this to, obviously, with our mission, if you like, or our vision to create a community of like-minded people in terms of health, and well-being. Um, as you know, the first two webinars were with Rachel, and we talked about mindset and mind and ego and that sort of a thing, which was very well received, as I said. And for the next 2 weeks, we're very, very honored and very, very privileged, really, to have John Toomey with us. John's probably one of the most in-demand speakers in terms of health and well-being in Australia. And he writes, speaks internationally, and as I said, we're very grateful to have him here and share his knowledge and information about a subject really which I don't know, from my own experience, I don't think people are, it's that close to their heart, and yet one would imagine that it would be insofar, but there you go. But I'm sure John and will discuss this and more, and next week he'll be talking more about mind-body stuff, whereas today is more about physical health. So I've subject extremely close to my heart also, and I've got about 1,001 questions, and as far as questions are concerned, feel quite free to put your questions up, and we'll leave time for you guys to ask questions, and we'll answer them. So without further ado, John Toomey.
Hey Bertram, how you going? Hi everybody, nice to be with you. So, well-being, Bertram. You're saying it's not close to people's hearts, and maybe it's not, but it's amazing the number of people who end up struggling and having a problem with their heart.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's and it's really sad. I mean, I'm sure all of us. I've lost several friends under the age of 45 who just suddenly here 1 minute, from the next. Good people, good men. And statistically, it's about 42% of cases, the very first symptom of coronary heart disease is sudden death. Amazing, yeah.
And I mean, from my own experience, you hear quite often about, oh my God, he was so fit, he was young, he was fit, and he'd been running and all of that stuff, looking after himself, then bang, gone.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the great misconceptions, that for a long time we've thought that fitness meant health. But that may not be so. It's such a bigger picture than that. It is really a much bigger picture than that. And we're starting to learn more and more and more. Yeah, for example, just recently, in the last couple of years, there's been a profound discovery made. And it was just through people working, I suppose, intuitively with people with desperate illness, people who are very, very ill with cancers and really severe degenerative disease. And somebody thought, well, these people really haven't got much to hope for, much to live for. So somebody sat down with some of these people and started to find out what their hopes were and what their hopes and dreams were for their life. And when these things started to wake up in these people, all of a sudden they got excited about living again, it started to get better.
Yeah.
And the testing that was done on these people demonstrated that their DNA had actually changed.
Wow.
Yeah. So they actually got well simply because they got their attention on creating a life again, as opposed to just fighting against the disease.
Yeah.
And so there's an enormous amount in inspiration, and that's got nothing to do with fitness or diet or raw food or supplements or anything, So it's a really, really big picture. And I think fundamentally we make some mistakes because we make it all about our diet, fitness, and those things are important.
Yeah.
But there is an answer to the question when people say, "How come my grandfather smoked and drank every day of his life and lived till he was 94?" There's other things happening.
I mean, I actually saw a video someone sent me of this guy in an old home, and I mean, he's a Black American gentleman, and he's like hunched over in his chair, and I mean, he was totally disinterested in everything.
Yeah.
And then they started to play some music, which they knew he liked, and he sits up, he starts paying attention, and he starts singing. You know, all of a sudden, this man has gone from nothing to alive and well and
Yeah.
you know active. And I thought, that's nothing to do with fitness or anything to do with diet or
Yeah.
anything, is it? I mean,
No.
it's something else. So,
Yeah, and this is really cool because we're going to talk a lot about this work next week. And we're going to talk a lot about the work of Dr. Bernie Siegel and Professor Dean Ornish, you know, medical doctors who are really living on the edge of discovery and they're really pushing the boundaries because they really have never wanted to go down the path of just prescribing drugs to people. And, you know, not to say that that's wrong, but really exploring what is the potential for people to heal themselves. You know, right, you know, not far from here is Swinburne University's School of Integrative Medicine, where medical doctors are being trained in all of these areas that are non-invasive, they're non-drug, they're non-surgery, and you know they're learning about all these areas, which is really exciting.
well, a very good friend of mine has been, I mean, at age 47, been diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Oh, wow.
And I obviously doing what I can to help a friend. I was talking about this to another friend, and he says, "Oh, take this book," and show it to him. It's written by a doctor, and it's called "How to Cure Cancer Without Drugs or Surgery."
Yeah.
And I've given him the book. That's as much as I can do. What he does with that is obviously his concern. But I mean, and when you start reading this sort of stuff, I mean, there's so much information out there where people have cured not cancer and all sorts of diseases and stuff like that, purely with natural therapy without going into drugs. I mean, I my dad was a doctor, but I don't hold the medical profession in very highly at the moment, given the fact that all, from my experience, seem to do is just give you a drug and patch the situation, not actually go to the cause of the illness, which, as you said, also could be here as much as, you know, in your body.
You know what Patch Adams said? Remember the movie Patch Adams?
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
Patch Adams is a real guy. I mean, he's 6'4" like me, and he goes to Russia and he goes to orphanages and he takes a whole lot of doctors and they dress up as clowns and they have a great time. And he's got an institute in Virginia called the Gesundheit Institute, which is you saw in the movie, you know, and you know he comes to Australia a bit, old Patch, and he said something once that was so beautiful. He said, "There is no such thing as an incurable disease, just an incurable person." Now, you know, some people really take all the learnings they can possibly get from the disease and their body doesn't survive. But I think those people are okay with that. But I think also, you know, to be fair to the medical profession, I mean, I've beaten them to death in my life. I really have. But the poor things, I mean, they go into that because a lot of people, I went to school with learning medicine because they were smart. Everybody said, "You're really smart, you should become a doctor." And I went, "Oh, okay, I'll become a doctor."
That's right.
But that might have been what their inspiration was. And they get into medicine, they sort of get stuck there. You know? And then there's other people who go in there because they want to be doctors, but the challenge is that they are overwhelmed trying to, relieve the discomfort of the people who aren't taking care of themselves. And you know, people walking to the surgery saying, they're not saying, "Doc, teach me how to be well." They're saying, "Doc, stop this pain. I feel awful.
Just give me a drug.
Give me something, you know." So really, all the medical profession is doing is responding to what the collective population really wants, you know. It may not be what they need, but it's what they want, you know. But the really cool part about it is that you've got this percentage of the population who are interested in taking care of themselves. And so because of their demand, we're seeing all these other alternatives to medicine popping up. And we're also seeing medical doctors shift into a more internal viewpoint, you know?
Sure. I mean, my doctor, I've only seen him once, but because I've seen other doctors prior to that, but when I had to go, I chose this particular doctor and I will stay with him because he wrote a book, How to Live Till You're Over 100, and he practices integrated medicine. He's a naturopath as well.
Well,
So, I mean, I had just a persistent cough and stuff like that. It just gave me some Chinese herbs. That was what it was. And you went bang like that because I don't take any medicine at all, ever.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's really cool that we come round to medicine and those sorts of things because part of the challenge is I was doing some research a couple of years ago into the costs of running healthcare in Australia. You know, there's this constant fear that there's not going to be enough hospital beds and there's not enough doctors in the country, and all this, all this fear about how we're going to fund medicine. And we can see, the whole American government has been shut down over healthcare.
That's right.
Like it's amazing because it's out of control. But the incredible thing is that we're spending so much money in areas that we don't know how to spend money. Now, take for example, let's pick a good one, cholesterol.
The myth.
Guys, if you believe that cholesterol causes heart disease, you need to go back to school. Because this whole thing, it all started back in the Framingham study. The Framingham is a town in Massachusetts. And, 50, 60 years ago, they started an epidemiological study looking at people's health. And somebody came up and said, wow, a lot of these people who die of heart disease have also got high cholesterol. And somebody among the research said, well, it must be the high cholesterol that leads to heart disease. Somebody grabbed hold of that. Now, a lot of those research
the drug companies, perhaps.
No. Cholesterol's got nothing to do with heart disease. But it became a belief because the drug companies knew. Somebody said, well, we know how to create a drug that will inhibit the liver from producing cholesterol, so we can bring the cholesterol down. So all of a sudden we have these cholesterol drugs, and they made their way in, and now they own the world. I mean, the biggest selling drug on the planet is a cholesterol drug. So it's the second biggest drug. I went into a pharmacy once about 6 years ago. That was the last time I was in a pharmacy. Isn't it amazing? And a friend of mine rang me at 2 o'clock in the morning. She was really unwell, and she said, "Can you please, I'm so sorry, Liz, but can you go to the pharmacy for me? I need a prescription filled." And so 2 o'clock in the morning, I drive from my place close to the city, right out to the eastern suburbs, to pick up the script, and then I had to find the pharmacy. There's a pharmacy over in Manningham Road, Templestowe. So I go into this pharmacy at 2:30 in the morning, and I'm standing there waiting, and I thought, well, it's a good time to tease the pharmacist. She must be bored. She's here by herself. And, and I looked at all this stuff behind the counter, and boxes of things, and I said, have a look at all this stuff. And she said, it's amazing, isn't it? And I said, so what's this week's bestseller? And she said, same as every other week. I said, what's that? And she goes, statins, cholesterol drugs. And she named the brands. I won't name the brands, but and I thought, oh wow, isn't that incredible? Because back in January 2008, so not long after that, a Business Week magazine in the US decided to take the biggest selling cholesterol drug on the planet to task. Because in their advertising, they state that their drug reduces your risk of heart disease by 36%. That's pretty attractive. You think if you've had a heart attack or you've got a family history of heart attack, taking that drug might be a thing. But they then looked at the studies to see how they got those figures. And basically, they had several thousand people taking the drug and several thousand people taking a placebo. What they found is over the course of the trial, in the placebo group, an average of just a touch over 3 out of 100 people had a heart attack. Okay? And in the drug group, it was just a smidgen under 2 people. So the difference between 3, just touch over 3 and just under 2 is 36%.
Oh.
No?
Right.
So it got funky after that because you see there's this code that drugs are meant to carry called an NNT code, NNT, number needed to treat. So basically it's saying how many people need to be treated with this drug before one person will be saved from that ailment, right? You would hope it's one. For every one person who takes this drug, one person will be prevented. Exactly. Yep, you'd hope it's one, right? Well, most medical academics will tell you that if a drug has an NNT of over 50, throw the drug out and go and buy a lottery ticket, right? But what this study revealed was that 100 people had to take this drug before one person was prevented from having a heart attack, which means that drug has an NNT 100, or just over 100. But that didn't end there, because the magazine said, well, hang on a minute, that's their own studies. Let's look at the independent studies. So when they pulled apart the independent studies, they worked out that 247 people had to take that drug before one person was prevented from having a heart attack. So this drug carries an NNT of 247, which basically makes it a completely useless drug that has side effects that make people sick. And our government is spending hundreds of millions of dollars funding people taking the drug.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the warning on the packaging would be a bit of a clue, wouldn't it? Hey?
I've never seen the warning. I've never bought the drug.
Yeah, well, I actually used to take it.
Did you really?
Yeah, because I've got naturally high cholesterol. And when I started to get into this and stuff, I mean, I like to read about why I'm doing something. The more I read about it, I said, rubbish, I'm not taking this thing, and I threw it away. And then I went back to the doctor and for some insurance tests, and he looked at my readings and he said, my God, your cholesterol is, 7.9. I mean, that's very high. He said, why? He said, I'm not taking the medicine. He said, why is that? And I said, why don't we agree to disagree on that one? He left it at that. I don't want to get into an argument with him about it, because I actually figured, and it might sound arrogant, but I had, I reckon, done more reading on cholesterol than he had, because he's given information by the drug companies, not by independent research.
Well, there is no independent source of information, really. And that's one of the challenges, but that's all right. I love living in a market economy.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
And that's part of the market economy. The drug companies are entitled to promote their product and sell it. And if you want to buy it, that's your choice. And I suppose, some of the folks listening are probably thinking, well, hang on a minute. What is called this heart disease? If it's not cholesterol, it's not cholesterol.
But then again, what goes through my mind, John, is that what's the government doing? Like in terms of looking at stuff like this, like for instance, not just this issue, fluoride and stuff like that. There's another big story about that, I'm sure. So
yeah, I mean, the fluoride it'll eventually go away, I think, because the case for it is really, really weak. But the challenge is that in Canberra you've got so many hundred lobbyists, and they earn their money from the people who can afford to pay them. So, and again, I reckon that's okay too, because that's just the way the system works. But no lobbyist can control my choices. So I get to choose still.
That's right.
And so it's really up to every person. And good on you guys for being in on this webinar, because you're deciding to learn something for yourself about health and well-being, and you might share it with your family. You might think, we're talking a crock, and that's cool too, because everybody's entitled to their own viewpoint.
But I mean, as what I'm saying is, we've discussed over the last so long about this, I mean, in a sense, indoctrination that we've endured, if you like, through school and society and stuff. And I mean, what I would love to see, especially in our community that we're building, is some people just taking an interest and making their own mind without accepting what is supposed to be the norm, because sometimes the norm is not what it is.
No,
so
the norm's what somebody's created it to be.
Right. I mean,
it takes a bit of marketing dollars. I was actually chatting to a federal politician, I won't name him, about 10 years ago, I think, about this whole situation with, just the incredible overspend on medicine in Australia when we really concentrated on prevention, really concentrated on prevention, we could really turn around and slash the healthcare bill in this country, I have no doubt. And I said, so in federal parliament, why don't you guys do something about this? And he said, believe me, we know. He said, but you have to understand that Big Pharma has got a bigger PR budget than us. And he said, there actually isn't the political will to take them on.
I mean, case in point, Monsanto and the march against Monsanto, which was this year, and I was on it in Melbourne, and there was something like 450 cities in the world where people marched against Monsanto. How much reporting got done on that one from the news media? Hardly anybody talked about it. And it's a significant thing when over 400 cities around the world, there's people marching in protest against something, and the news media ignores it. What is that telling you?
Yeah, well, it's the news media again, they're sensitive to their advertisers. You know, exactly. That's the way it goes.
So let's work.
I wanted to write an article once in the weekly bulletin magazine that goes out to doctors.
Yeah.
And I wrote this article, presented. I said, "We're not publishing that. Our sponsors will pull the advertising and put that in there."
Yeah,
sure, fair enough. That's all right. But you know, it's like you can get really angry and really serious about it, or you just go, "Okay, well that's how it is. How do we change it?" And like this is really cool, this sort of thing, because when we're talking about it and we're giving people advice and teaching them, and you know, Chinese medicine, they constantly say it's all about blood. Keep the blood really healthy, and the body will be okay.
Which brings us to pH, right?
Yeah, and pH and hydration as well, because and also platelet clumping. I mean, all that stuff is really interesting. You know, whether any of our people who are tuning in have ever had live blood analysis. The live blood analysis is incredible. You go to this clinic, naturopath, some doctors do it. You can't get a couple of Medicare guys who get paid for it. And they just take a single drop of blood, just prick your finger, drop of blood, and they put it under a microscope, which has got a video camera hooked up to it, and you see your drop of blood on a big screen. It's amazing. And you can see what the blood's doing. The blood's still alive. When you go and normally get a blood test, by the time the blood gets tested, it's dead. I don't know why they test dead blood, but you know. But anyway, so you can see what your blood's doing, and it's amazing. And one of the things that stands out the most is platelet clumping. The platelets of blood should all be flowing nice and separately, but what happens is they clump together. And when they clump together, it thickens the blood becomes more viscous, and all sorts of funky stuff starts happening. And one of the things is that thicker blood is abrasive to the internal walls of arteries. It's friction, okay? And so when we get that friction, it starts to damage the walls of the arteries, and because it's damaged, then the body needs to heal them, and the healing process is inflammation. So that the body inflames the area to start the healing process. And once that happens, things start to roll and things start to happen. And normally, the healing requires these little things called prostaglandins. Prostaglandins 1 and 3, they come in there and they're the ones that crank up the inflammation. And prostaglandin 2 is like the supervisor who comes and goes, okay, that's enough inflammation, we don't need any more than that, you know. And it keeps the inflammation nice and controlled and we get a nice heal. But the problem is, most people, because of the way they eat, they've got way too much prostaglandin 1 and 3, not enough prostaglandin 2. So the inflammation response is much bigger than it needs to be. So you get a bigger healing response. Now, when the body's repairing that cell walls, the raw material or the putty that it uses to fix it up as part of the whole healing process is cholesterol. This is where we get the cholesterol coming in to do the repair job. And that's all fine too, but it's what the cholesterol picks up along the way and brings with it that does the damage to its calcium.
So really come back to the thick blood, which is, as you said, caused by hydration.
Yeah, well,
pH,
you know, and also the polarity of the platelets. So they're almost magnetic when they clump against each other. And that's a whole interesting one. So, I mean, perhaps, in starting tonight and talking about physical health and the areas that we can really look at, first one's hydration. I think that's the starting point for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, so simple and yet so ignored. And I mean, when you talk to, well, John can chat through the guys at work, and it was like foreign information. They've never heard about stuff like this. And, they're all sort of changing the way they have water, the soft drinks and stuff like that. And then the story you told about the 45-litre drum and the chloric, I mean, that blew everybody out of the water.
Out of the water. And how they all felt since they've been drinking more water.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, we had our antioxidant scan today at work, and I organised Bruce, that I met at your health breakfast. He sent Oliver over, and and it was mind-blowing how low everybody's antioxidant levels were. And I mean, you might want to touch on that, but how Oliver explained it to me, he said if your antioxidant level is low, it creates free radicals in your body. The free radicals have an effect on your DNA, which creates illness and sickness and disease. And we had people actually I was quite pleased because I was the oldest one and I had the second highest score.
It looks good for 92.
It does. and apart from, one person who was 20, I think she's 28 or 29, she had a higher score than myself. The rest of them are all much younger than me, and they're pathetic.
Yeah.
So how many people even pause to think about antioxidants? How many people pause to think about pH? How many people talk about water, as we're just doing?
And so the attitude most of us have to our health is how do we look when we're in the mirror? And if we don't look that good, we don't buy some clothes. Yeah. We can always look good with a new outfit, And it's, I must admit with the fashion trends, when it came to the point of no longer tucking in your t-shirt, I used to think, wow, that's going to create a problem because guys now don't have to be self-conscious about how their belly looks when they got their t-shirt tucked in because they can wear it untucked, But it's interesting, and most people don't realise how important water is. During the day, one of the key functions that your blood serves is to remove heat from the core of your body. And it does that by trapping heat in molecules of water. Like all your organs are working all the time, generating heat. And if you're physically active, your muscles generate heat as well. So all this heat's got to get out of the body, otherwise you cook yourself. So your body traps heat in these molecules of water. And some of those molecules of water, your blood deposits them in your sweat glands, and they just evaporate through your skin. And the rest gets deposited in the lungs. And it comes out as water vapor in your air as you breathe out, which you can't see. Yeah, so it's exactly. And so your blood's giving away all this water, and it's got to keep replenishing its water. And it does that by drawing water out of the bowel. Most people don't realise that their bowel is their body's water tank. And if there's no water in the bowel, the blood can't stop giving water away, and it does, because it's got to get rid of heat. So as the day goes on, the water level in the blood drops. So the blood volume drops, and the blood starts to get thicker. So here we've got the thick blood problem again. Most people wake up with thick blood, So then, as the day goes on, what happens is, because their blood's thick and their blood volumes drop, they struggle to get enough blood flow to their brain. So when their brain's not getting enough blood, it's not getting enough oxygen. So their brain switches on a reflex which is designed to enrich oxygen supply. And that is they start yawning. That's why people yawn at 10:30 in the morning.
I mean, I know straight away. As soon as I start to yawn, I don't have enough water.
Yeah. And you go and have a big drink and it fixes it.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. But most people, what do when they start yawning?
A soft drink.
Or coffee.
Yeah, that's right.
Or
wake myself up.
Or they roll out this really good justification why they've got low blood sugar and they probably do need chocolate.
There's always a good reason for chocolate.
Always a good reason for chocolate. It's the Tim Tam principle, And but the real factor is that they go off and they do that, and they come back and feel better. But that was because they walked. The walking pushed their blood pressure up, so they got more blood up to their brain, and so the brain got some oxygen. But then they come back and sit down and the symptoms are back. But this time, the brain goes for plan B.
Sorry?
Plan B.
Okay.
Plan B's got two things. Number one, it's to get the body horizontal so that blood will flow more easily to the brain, and to slow down metabolic rate to reduce heat production. So plan B, people start dozing off. We've all seen people in meetings, they do it. They put the writing paper there, they hold the pen in the hand, they do this. And everything's cool till they go. It's dozing off during the day.
Do that in Parliament a lot.
It's like I wrote an article today that says, you crash more often than your computer, And, it's just because they're dehydrated. And every person should be drinking, on a normal day, a litre of water for every 25 kilograms of body weight every day. So for me, I'm a little over 100 kilos. That's 4 litres of water. Now, because I run in the morning, that's 5, 6 litres of water a day.
And if you have a coffee?
I only have 2 coffees a day. I have good coffees, and I always have a glass of water. Yeah. And good restaurants know when somebody's having coffee, they'll provide water as well. Yeah. So, and you're dehydrated as well if you're starting to really struggle and go flat at the end of the day, or if you're starting to crave rich food, okay, or if your urine's yellow, because when you're dehydrated, your body hangs on your urine a lot longer. When you pass it, it's concentrated, it's yellow. Your urine should be watercoloured. You'll know what colour your urine is after you've had a big night of drink.
Yes.
And it's yellow when you wake up. You should be try to drink a quarter of your daily water intake as soon as you get out of bed, before you do anything.
Well, I actually, for a long time now, I've been drinking a big glass of water in the morning. And if I don't have lemon, squeeze the lemon, then I use apple cider vinegar, just a teaspoon of organic, obviously, apple cider vinegar, and that again comes to the pH as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the apple cider vinegar really helps strengthen your stomach acid so you digest your food better. And the lemon juice in the water in the morning stimulates the release of an enzyme called secretin. And secretin stimulates your pancreas to release bicarbonates into your blood. And the bicarbonates alkalize your body. Yeah. It's very cool. Good thing to do first thing in the morning. And that really leads on to us understanding pH, because most people don't know what the relationship is between, with the human body. But if you've ever swum in a swimming pool, you want the pH of that swimming pool to be absolutely what it should be, which is about 7.4. Because when the pH drops, so the pH scale goes from 0 to 14. So 7.4 is slightly to the alkaline side of neutral. Now, if it drops, the ability for that water to carry oxygen is drastically reduced. Now, if you've got 2 glasses of water from 2 different swimming pools here, and this one's got a pH of 7.4 and this one's 6.8, this one can carry 100 times more oxygen.
Wow.
Yeah. Incredible, isn't it? So when the water becomes acidic, the oxygen level in the water drops, and all those little critters that don't like an oxygen-rich environment move in and set up home in your pool. Bacteria, viruses, funguses, molds, parasites, all set up house in your pool.
Well, when I was in Bali recently, all of a sudden I realized I had this big fungus on my back. I've been swimming in the pool.
What was her name?
Not that one. Yeah, I mean, but that story you said about the 45 liters of water and the Coke.
Yeah.
I think it's a must-tell.
Oh yeah, well, I will, because see what happens with your blood, the arterial blood, which is the bright red blood, it's just been pumped out by your heart. It's full of oxygen. It's got a pH of 7.4. The darker blood that's coming back to your heart has got a pH of 7.35. The rest of your body fluids, intracellular and extracellular fluids, have got a pH of around 7 to 7.2. That's a healthy body. You know, cancer cells cannot survive in a pH above 5.5. So any tissue where you get cancer, it means that that part of your body is very acidic. Now, amazing. Now, the thing is that your body is going to do everything it can to protect the blood. So whenever you put something acidic into your body, it's going to do everything it can to protect your blood. Because what do you think would happen to you if your pH of your arterial blood dropped from 7.4 to 7.2? You'd be dead.
What?
You'd be dead.
Yeah, just that.
Just that. Just that. Oh, because see, that's a logarithmic scale. The difference in oxygen carrying capacity between a pH of 7.4 and a pH of 7.35 is a 65% drop.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. So by the time you get to 7.2, your blood cannot carry enough oxygen to keep you alive. So your whole body is geared to keeping your blood pH at 7.4. But down in the cells, down in the tissue, you can become very acidic. Now, people say to me, well, how do I make myself acidic? Well, certainly what I put in my mouth can make me acidic, or it can help make me alkaline. But also we're going to talk next week about the mind-body stuff. Negative stress, resentment, hatred, worry, anxiety, all make you very acidic.
But the interesting thing is what sort of puzzled me, if you like, or is that when we talk about acid, we talk about putting lemon into your water or apple cider vinegar. They're both acid, and yet they alkaline your body.
Alkalize your body.
So, like if you eat a mandarin, you're actually alkalining it.
Well, the most alkalizing food that you can eat outside of seaweed, because seaweed is profoundly alkalizing, but the most alkalizing food that the average person would eat is an orange, because the pulp is all phosphates. You see, when you do something to make your body a bit acidic, your pancreas fires up and starts pumping bicarbonates in your blood. But if your pancreas can't keep up, and by the way, if you dehydrate it, the pancreas can't do that. Right? So it's a double whammy. The next thing your blood will do is draw calcium phosphate out of your bones. And it draws calcium phosphate out and it uses the phosphate to neutralize acids and dumps the calcium. So that dumped calcium is floating around in the blood. There's a little bit of inflammation on the internal walls of an artery. The body calls for some cholesterol from the liver. The cholesterol is flowing through the blood, and one of the things cholesterol does is it cleans up. So it finds all this calcium floating around in the blood, so it picks it up on the way. And it goes to the artery, into the artery wall, and the cholesterol gets deposited in with the calcium. Calcium shouldn't be there. The plaque that builds up in arteries is actually about 90% calcium. It's calcium that's been extracted from the bones because something's too acidic. Incredible. So I was telling Bertram and the crew, you know, and he's mentioned it a couple of times. He's pretty keen on me to explore this and share with you. But there was a study done 40 years ago where some researchers got a 45-litre drum. Now, the reason they chose 45 litres, because back in the early 70s, in medical science, it was considered that the average person weighed about 63 kilos. It's probably shifted a kilo.
I reckon it has. By about 10.
10 what? Bushels? Yeah. And anyway, so your body's about 70% water, so 70% of 63 is 45. So they got 45 litres of water. And they set the pH of that water to 7.4, nice and stable. Then they got a 250 ml glass. Now that glass there would be 350 ml, I reckon. So maybe 300. So it wasn't even a glass that size, and they filled it up with everybody's favourite fizzy sweet black liquid. And they poured it into the drum and gave it a stir and let it settle and remeasured the pH. And the pH had dropped from 7.4 to 4.6.
250 mil in 45 litres, right?
It's 1/180th.
So when we take a glass of that ourselves, what are we doing?
Well, the really cool part is the body's got some defense mechanisms, but if you do it for long enough, it's like smoking. You know, and I've always say to people, I've got 3 kids, they're all in their early 20s now, but I would say that when they were growing up, when they were teenagers, I would have much rather catch them smoking a cigarette than drinking that stuff. I think that so much of the disease in the Western world right now is caused by a lack of water and overconsumption of soft drink, or pop, as the Americans call it, soda. You know, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm 53, and when I was a kid, I lived for a period in the mid-60s, I lived on a dairy farm outside Toowoomba, Queensland. And we used to go into town on Sundays to go to church and go and visit my grandparents and that sort of thing. And then occasionally, on a Sunday afternoon, driving home from the farm, my dad drop into the pub and have a beer. And us kids would go in there and we would get given a 5-ounce glass of soft drink. And that was our soft drink allotment. Once every 3 or 4 weeks, 5-ounce glass of soft drink. Now, it's like, wow.
Well, actually, my kids never had soft drink. I was really keen on not, except of course when they went out of home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I remember, you know, them coming back from birthday parties, which they've gone and had lots of high fructose corn syrup, which is a huge part of every soft drink there is, and that's a whole other story, isn't it? High fructose corn syrup.
Yeah, and it's really cool that you've brought that up, because this whole acidity thing, you know, is you know, basically, if you want to find out which foods are acidic and which foods are acid forming, which ones are alkalizing, predominantly the foods that are alkalizing or low acid forming are all the naturally occurring foods. The ones that do the most acid producing are the heavily processed foods, and sugar and artificial sweeteners are some of the worst, soft drinks, that sort of stuff, you know. And you know, and things like beef and that sort of stuff are not really designed to be we normally eat. But it really brings us around to the next point about, you know, talk about high fructose corn syrup. It's almost like the world has now freaked out about fructose. It's totally freaked out.
Gone the other way.
And because one of the things is, see, a cancer cell is, it's really interesting. Cancer cells feed off sugar, and they love fructose. Right? So when you're pumping heaps of high fructose corn syrup into your system, and if you've got some cancer cells, it's, you know, your body's going to lap it up, and those cancer cells are really going to feed on it. But the interesting thing is that I don't believe all fructose is problematic, because a lot of fructose is very naturally occurring, and it comes in a supported compound when it's in a fruit, you know. So, but when you're drinking soft drink, you're getting very concentrated fructose.
But also these so-called fruit places, you know, where you go and get a fruit juice. Now, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, pumping yourself up with like about 4 oranges in juice in one shot is a little bit not so good.
Well, yeah, I mean, I believe with fruit predominantly.
Better off eating one orange.
Eat an orange, you know. And when I juice things, I used to have a juicer, but now I blend them, so I still get the whole orange. Okay, and I reckon that's pretty cool to do it that way. But you know, I think that sometimes we can be a little obsessive and we overdo things, you know. It's like when we get into, we need more juice, you know, then all of a sudden people start living on juice and they're carrot juicing like crazy and their skin starts turning orange, you know, and they go, oh, you ate too much beetroot, you know. But it's, we can go a little over the top, you know, and it's got to the point now that there's some people walking around dead frightened of any form of carbohydrate. But the problem is when you exercise, that's your body's fuel source. Your body uses carbohydrate and it needs it, you know. But certainly the more complex the carbohydrate, very whole foods, that sort of thing.
Not sugar.
Not sugar. And, you know, and like a little bit of raw honey's okay, and those sorts of things. But anything that's heavily processed or that sort of stuff. See, sugar's a really interesting one because one of the things that leads people to diabetes or problems with sugar is a lack of chromium in their body.
Lack of?
Chromium,
Okay.
the mineral chromium. Now, chromium is rich in sugar cane, but when it gets processed and highly refined, all the chromium's gone. So if you plant sugarcane, the sugarcane crop will steal all the chromium out of the soil for 1.5 kilometres around. I mean, it's like full of chromium. So if you were to just dry out sugarcane juice and use that as a sweetener, it'd be cool. It's a whole food. It's a superfood. But when we take it in its highly refined form, that's why if I buy sugar at home, I tend to buy muscovado sugar because it's almost like dried out sugarcane sap,
Brown.
Yeah, deeply brown and clunky, chunky and hard and all that sort of stuff. And it's got this really rich molasses flavour.
Some cafes are starting to keep
Yeah. Yeah. And it's but the food producers are so funny because they put things like instead of saying sugar on the packaging, they say dehydrated cane juice.
Wow.
Yeah, so they've refined the cane juice down to basically liquid sugar and then dehydrated it into crystal form and put it in things. So it's dehydrated cane juice.
I mean, the funny thing is I was once told by a personal trainer, I'm not saying it was right, but I'm just saying I remember him saying, there's 4 white things you shouldn't have. Milk, milk, sugar, salt, and flour.
Yep.
Now, is there some validity in that?
Well, I certainly don't drink milk.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't quite figure that one out. Never have been able to. I remember as a kid drinking the milk at school. They made us drink milk, and I thought it tasted awful. Why do I have to drink this stuff? I don't want to drink it, And I haven't drunk it for, I don't know, 35 years, I don't think, But we certainly don't need it because cow's milk is acid forming in the body. So it makes people acidic.
And it leaches your phosphorus.
And your calcium, and
calcium.
Yeah, exactly. And the 5 countries in the world with the highest rate of osteoporosis per capita are Australia, New Zealand, the US, the Netherlands, and Denmark. Now they're not third world countries, but the other thing that they have in common is that they are 5 countries with the highest per capita consumption of cow's milk. It's amazing, and they've got the highest calcium intake as well. So those messages don't come from the health department.
Yes, no, they don't. In fact, you drink more milk, as you said, pointed out to me, it's not from the health department.
No.
It says dairy.
Australian Dairy Council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, come on, drink more of our stuff and get sick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we'll give you a hot milk while you're sick.
Make you more sick.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's really interesting, the whole thing. It's about getting us to, like basically food producers want us to eat more and more and more food. So they're figuring out ways to make it taste more and more and more delicious so we can't stop ourselves and get a bit addicted to it. And so they make increased profits. But for a society, it ain't working for us. And we've all got to take some personal responsibility.
That's the thing. That's the thing. I mean, the amazing amount of research apparently goes into researching like how to make people eat, say, chocolate or sweets, and what level of sweetness is the most, palatable for people and the most encouraging to keep going with it so that they keep eating more.
Yeah.
I was reading this stuff thinking, this is ridiculous, In fact, I mean, I was told, again, I never asked you this question. Someone said commercially made chocolate is really not that good for you. That it's really organic chocolate, which is the cacao powder, which is not changing its composition by the high process of making normal chocolate. Is that right?
Yeah, and I mean, so chocolate, vegetable oils, sugars, which we talk about, all those, they're so pulverized in the processing that they're not what they were anymore. You know? And the other thing, just to go back to the white stuff, the personal trainer talking about salt, I don't agree with him there.
Yeah.
We need salt. And if we're going to properly hydrate ourselves, we need minerals in our body. But I would never eat table salt because it's so highly refined.
That's right.
It's just a big burst of sodium, and your body's got to work hard to get rid of all that sodium. Throws everything out of balance. But I'm a huge fan of Celtic sea salt. It's hand harvested, basically evaporated seawater from the north of France. And you can't put it in a salt shaker because it's too damp. But it has in it almost identical mineral and trace mineral profile to the human body. So when you put it in your body, nothing goes out of balance. And it nurtures you and it alkalizes you. So it's a pretty cool thing to do. Yeah. And, sports drinks, no need. Before you go out for a long run, if it's a warm day, just a third of a teaspoon of Celtic sea salt, a little bit of water, throw it down the hatch, drink the water, job's done. Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, so we've covered a whole lot of stuff. And the thing is, like, there's so much more to talk about when you get down to talking about diet and exercise. We haven't even touched on exercise.
Yeah. Well, there's one exercise I'd really love to talk to everybody about.
Sure.
And this is a fairly new one. And this is an incredible discovery. And I think it's one of the most exciting things of all time. That platelet clumping that we were talking about. And one of the things I said before is because of free radical activity, the polarity of the platelets changes and they start clumping together. So what we need to do is to do something to remove that free radical influence so we can change the polarity. See, because what happens with free radicals, they lose an electron and they become unstable, right? So what has been discovered now is that the Earth is this constant flow of free electrons coming off the ground, okay? And if you go walking barefoot on natural terrain, beach, grass, that sort of thing, for 80 minutes, the free electron flow coming out of the Earth will unclump all your platelets, and the blood will flow beautifully. And once you've done it once, you then just need to do it a couple of times a week for 20 minutes or so. If you've got a garden, walk around out in the garden barefoot.
Actually, I mean, that's why when I go to Bali, which I do a lot, I just keep walking on the beach.
Yeah.
And barefoot, not with shoes on. Like most people are walking on the beach with shoes on.
Yeah.
Thinking, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Wear barefoot. And it's so much better for you.
Well, they might get sand under their toe.
Well, there you go. And also the seawater is so good for you to be absorbed into your body.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and the other thing, I've just drawn a link then right now. In America, they're putting kids as young as 10 on cholesterol drugs. Can you believe that? And I'm wondering what the link is, how many kids in modern America are allowed to go outside barefoot?
And then talking about kids and all this stuff about ADD and ADHD, maybe we can touch on that next week.
Yeah, we can.
Because I mean that's more about the holistic mind-body stuff also.
Absolutely.
But just quickly, I mean we're fast running out of time. We haven't left too much time for questions, but perhaps we'll just keep going with a couple of things I just want to touch on, which I felt was really important. And that was when we talked before about, cooking and, this issue of olive oil and coconut oil.
Yeah.
And you know how coconut oil got, I don't know why, but it got a really bad rap.
Yeah.
And I think the bad rap was created by the publicity people working for the corn producers who was corn oil, right? So they want to get rid of coconut oil. But now it's slowly coming to pass that, am I right in saying, that coconut oil is the best thing you could ever use for cooking?
Well, it has a very high ignition temperature, so it doesn't burn.
That's right.
Most of the other oils do. The amazing thing about coconut oil is it's also a very powerful antiviral, antifungal, and antibacterial. So it really helps to create an environment in your body where those things can't survive, And it's great on the skin.
Oh, I mean, as someone said, you can use coconut oil for on your hair, on your skin,
I might try it on my hair.
Yeah, you might do.
I got told once I got a head like a coconut. So.
But I mean, coconut's amazing. I mean, you can drink the water; it's brilliant for that. You can eat the pulp, and that's really good for you. The whole thing is amazing, and yet it got such a bad rap. But thank God, people are waking up to the fact that.
Well, yeah, it's just there was this belief that because it's got a high saturated fat content, that was going to do something bad to your body. But you know, I always say butter, coconut oil. Put them on a table at body temperature and see if they stay solid. I don't think so. You know, it's such a ridiculous argument. They're very good foods. And you know the other oil that's amazing for the human body. I mean, if you want to talk about omega-3s, I mean, we don't really need to supplement omega-3s. We just need to stop consuming so much omega-6, which is margarine and cheap vegetable oils. But see, olive oil is all omega-9, right? It's fine. But we have way too much omega-6, and I've never understood why we have to absolutely obliterate so much aquatic life just so that we can get omega-3 capsules. That to me is the ultimate arrogance of the human race.
That's karma.
Yeah. We don't need that. We just need to cut down our omega-6. Now, if you do need some omega-3, you know, you can use walnut oil or chia seeds or flaxseed oil, although flaxseed oil is not really recommended for men because it tends to somewhere in there stir up the prostate gland a little bit, especially if there's a little bit of hyperplasia already there. But the other oil, which is magnificent for all that, we're not allowed to have it in Australia.
Hemp.
Hemp. Yeah. When I go to the States, I buy hemp oil all the time. I buy hemp milk from my smoothies. I mean, it's incredible. Hemp meal, that sort of stuff. Now, you can buy it here in Australia, but you have to basically accept that you're not going to put it in your mouth because it's illegal to put it in your mouth. Or you can go over to New Zealand and have it, but you can't have it here. This is the only country left in the world now where you're not allowed to have hemp oil.
Well, I have hemp protein in my smoothie.
Yeah, well, you could get arrested for that.
Oh, I bought
it's
it in the
illegal.
market.
It's illegal.
Is it?
Yep.
I bought it in the market.
It's illegal for you to put anything hemp in your mouth. Now, this is the hemp that isn't a drug. This is industrial hemp.
Yeah.
But,
the best protein, apparently, one of the best.
Oh, it is. Amazing. Well, a gram of hemp's got, it's 4 times the protein of meat. But it's incredible. But, yeah, the whole thing is a little weird. Maybe there's some industries being protected because hemp is amazing for clothing, building materials. It's an incredibly sustainable crop, But
well, actually, I read something a long time ago about the DuPont company, DuPont family, and hemp was an opposing product. Here's a natural one. Here's nylon, right, which is produced by them. And of course, they managed to get some American congressman to outlaw hemp. And that's how the whole thing changed.
Yeah.
And
that's smart business, really. Yeah.
Again, talk about big pharma and how the power they have, the Monsantos of the world, and then you talk about this, money can create people to think that something is good when it's really, really bad for you. And then you've got the government almost supporting that argument, like when we talked about that with fluoride and cholesterol and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
but the amazing thing, there is nothing more powerful than the consumer. That's true. Yeah. Consumers choose because those companies will just keep doing what they do unless their market starts to dry out. And they'll change.
And I mean, we're fast running out of time, and it's just zipped past for me. I hope it was the same for you because there's so much more we can cover, and obviously we're going to be doing that next week with John on the mind body stuff. But also, it's probably very important to say we're also going to have a seminar at the end of this I think it's on the 26th of this month. It's a Saturday morning. We'll give you more information about that in due course, where we can talk about a lot more stuff and also give people the opportunity to really ask questions and really interact with the presenters being John and Rachel. So look forward to that too, and we'll be sending out information about that so you can register and make sure you get a seat because there's only limited numbers of seats for that. And again, as I said, we are so lucky to have someone like John and Rachel come and do this stuff for us because, I mean, they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart, which is so awesome because they're giving people and they give and give and give and give. But and John, my avatar master also, so that's a whole nother story. But when we talk about creating this community, I've got something else in my mind now.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, guys, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. I think John's going to be in Orlando
Yes.
next week, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, which is 7 o'clock over here. But John's normally up and around at that time of the day, so certainly I'm not. So we'll be a slightly different format. He won't be sitting next to me. He'll be on his own webcam, but we'll still be able to get the stuff to you and make it as interesting as we possibly can. So thank you once again, John.
Thanks, Bertram.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks,
having you
everybody.
around. Okay.
Take care.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.